Hallo und herzlich willkommen. Hier ist eine neue Folge von Radikal glücklich, deinem Podcast für ein strahlendes, sehr gut gelauntes Leben. Ich bin Silja, dies ist Folge 279 und Emmie Rae vom Daily Rest Studio ist zu Gast. Es geht um How to live gentle in a fast world, also wie man sanft und weich lebt in einer schnelllebigen Welt. After a short German introduction, there will be the English interview. Wie ihr schon hört, es wird eine englische Podcast-Folge. Ich will kurz ein bisschen von Emmie erzählen. Sie begleitet mich jetzt seit nicht ganz einem Jahr. Sie ist eine Yogalehrerin aus Australien, die irgendwann mal Schreiben studiert hat und dann im Yoga gefunden hat und irgendwann das restaurative Yoga, also wo man viel Pausen macht, sich ausruht, kann man fast sagen, aber das auf sehr schöne und wunderbare Weise. Und sie hat dann eine Online-Community gegründet, wie ein Online-Yoga-Studio, wo man monatlich Beitrag zahlt und ihre Klassen anschauen kann. Und das heißt The Daily Rest Studio. Und ich habe das, ich weiß gar nicht mehr über wen gefunden und es hat mich von Anfang an fasziniert, weil es mir wirklich schwerfällt, Pausen zu machen, mich nicht über mein Tun zu definieren, sondern langsamer zu werden, weicher, sanfter. Und ich fühle den Sog dahin und gleichzeitig ist es richtig schwer. Von daher habe ich mich mehr als geehrt gefühlt, dass Emmie sich Zeit genommen hat für ein Interview mit mir hier für den Podcast. Und du erfährst im Interview, wie sie selber auf diesen ganzen Weg des Pausemachens gekommen ist, wie das mit ihrem Business klappt, warum sie denkt, dass Freundlichkeit und Sanftheit eine Superpower ist, wie wir rauskommen, dass wir nicht unsere sanfte Praxis das nächste To-Do wird auf unserer Liste, wie wir unseren Weg finden zwischen Disziplin und Belohnung. Und sie hat ein paar tolle Tipps. Ihre Links sind in den Shownotes und auch das Buch, was sie empfiehlt. Und ich habe 3 Bücher, die sie auch empfohlen hat, die packe ich euch auch in die Shownotes. Die lese ich nämlich gerade und die gefallen mir auch sehr gut. Ich wünsche euch ganz, ganz viel Freude bei dieser Folge. Ich hoffe, ihr habt so viel Spaß wie ich dabei gehabt. Und ja, danke fürs Zuhören. Danke an Emmie und bis bald. So I'm happy and honored to have a special guest today on the podcast. That's Emmie from the Daily Rest Studio. I've already told everybody in the German introduction that I love your work. I found you somewhere through Instagram last year and have been learning to rest more because of the Daily Rest Studio. And what made me click the yes, I want to be in it button was that it says spa for your spirit. And I was like, oh yes, I need this. That is so cool. So thank you for your work. And maybe for everybody who doesn't know your work and who doesn't know you, you might want to introduce you with some sentences, whatever you feel sharing.
Thank you so much. I love that you loved that line because I feel very connected to those words. My name is Emmie. I'm originally from Australia, but I live in Tokyo in Japan. I have this platform called the Daily Rest Studio, and it's a spa for your spirit. But there's so much in this space that it's not necessarily just yoga practices, but I hope many different tools, workshops, rituals, practices that can encourage us all to take more moments of quiet and rest and ease, because I think we all need it, whether we have like a really big, full, busy life or not. I think those of us who really crave and need rest so much can be the ones who turn away from it the most and need the most encouragement. And I suppose I created this space because I found that I actually needed more discipline and support in my rest practices, more than I did need discipline in, my work and my working out and all these other things. I actually needed to be more yeah, held in taking time to do less. So that was one of the intentions behind the space.
I love that so much because I feel like we are all kind of sharing our own medicine. So, like, I think the yoga teachers, I'm a one too. So, I think we start with yoga because we are so stressed and
Yeah.
can't keep our monkey mind quiet. And then we finally share it because we see the benefits for us. So, I love that rest and the discipline for rest is still also part of your intention. So, I'm talking about that now that you talked about discipline. Sometimes I have the feeling that when I'm scheduling things for me, like, oh, I want to do more yoga or I want to rest more, that in the process it becomes a task, a to do too, rather than something that frees me. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I agree with that very deeply. I am someone who can be too disciplined almost, like, yeah, I think, yeah, really, really disciplined. And then exactly, I had a moment a few years ago where I realized I was going through the motions of a lot of these practices. I was doing the meditation and the asana and all of these things, but I wasn't really in them. I wasn't really in them. I was kind of just ticking them off the list. And I think sometimes that's where we need to start almost when we want to when we've never done any yoga or we've never done any practices. Maybe we need to start by saying, okay, every morning I'm going to take 5 minutes, or, every Friday morning I'm going to do this, right? This like one practice. I think that can be a good place to start if we've never taken any time for ourselves. But definitely now I really try to avoid actually scheduling a lot of that in. I know everyone's lifestyle is different, but I just find that if we can do one thing with real presence and real attention and actually just do it and be in it, it can be 5 minutes, but the effect can sometimes be greater than an hour-long practice that we're doing just because we're like, if I don't practice today, I'm a bad person.
Yes.
Like that's something that took me a long time to shift out of, which is why in the studio, I offer every month, we have a theme and we have a suggested daily practice, but I try to use the language of most days or, whenever it feels right, because I really think that forcing ourselves to do the same thing every single day, I get that there's benefits to it. I get that it works for some people, but I think that's where we lose a lot of magic. Then it just becomes, yeah, another task rather than, oh, I get to do this. And this is so beautiful and so nourishing. Yeah.
Yes, and I love that you talk about this like a process where we lean into, because what I feel is that I need to still learn to celebrate those precious moments with myself.
Yeah.
And keeping my head not to be like one moment ahead, like what will I do after? Okay, now there comes this position, now this is gonna come. So I'm still I'm still learning the celebration of life.
I love that. Me too.
Okay. Maybe you could share a little of your own path into gentleness. So maybe we can dive here a little deeper, because the other sentence there is when I looked at the Daily Rest Studio, it is possible to live gently in a busy world. And I love that. I love that so much. I even printed it out and put it in my sketchbook.
Oh, I love that.
Because those words are bringing it on point. So has there been also for you a moment to realize, okay, I need to be more gentle with myself? And how did that path then unfolded?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's still unfolding. still, still working on it, but absolutely. I think it's very interesting. I feel for a lot of my life, I think my nature is someone who is kind of gentle. I can be shy, I can be quiet. I'm kind of a soft natured person. But at the same time, I've always been, like I said before, very disciplined, very busy. I always have a lot of ideas and projects and friends. And I love to exist in that way where there's many different things going on and I'm connecting with people and I'm working on my business, I'm doing my hobbies. And so I often felt that I had to choose one or the other in a way. Like I felt like I had to choose this, like, I just meditate like 5 hours a day and I want to move to the countryside and never see anyone ever again, you know. And assertive and kind of feel more that part of my personality. And it's been really interesting that the more I practiced, like made space for rest and practiced rest, the more those two parts became very naturally integrated, I believe. And it's like, this is why a lot of the languaging is like, you can live gently in a fast-paced world and you can do hard things gently, because sometimes I think maybe there's this feeling that if I want to live softly and gently, I have to disconnect from society completely, or I have to or I'm not ever allowed to be stressed, or I'm just like very introverted and very quiet. And maybe that's true for many people. But I also think that like life's still going to be hard, life's still going to be challenging. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because through the difficulty and the challenges, there's growth and expansion and there's stories and connection. But through taking just small pockets of time over weeks, months, years, I feel that we can really find this balance is an elusive word, but find more of an integrated whole of having the part of us that's whatever, extroverted or silly or creative or wild or whatever it is for you, loves your like high-powered office job, you have 5 kids, whatever the story is, you can do those things and still hold yourself really gently and always not be. I love what you said before about even in the yoga practice, we're so often in the next posture before we've left the one that we're currently in. And I think we're like that in life too. We're doing something and we're already in the next thing. We hit one milestone or achievement and we're immediately into like what's coming next, before we even celebrate what we have in that moment. And so it's an ongoing process. I'm also someone who can be, like I think many of us, very, very hard on myself. But through these practices, it's been so incredible to see that start to shift. And to also, I think the thing that's been so healing is to start to disconnect more and more the achievements and the external success and what life looks like on the outside to my worthiness, and how I feel about myself and how I talk to myself in my own head, and know that whether I've, had a month or a week or a year that looks like I hit all these goals or not, I can still hold myself in the same way, and I can still rest. I can still rest as much in the busy periods of life and in the slow periods of life. I deserve rest equally. I don't have to be burnt out and struggling and striving to deserve rest. I can also be having a very chill, easy period of time and still take that time for myself. So I think it's ongoing, but it's definitely been, something that I'm just so grateful for every day.
And I think it makes what happened to me in those months now working with you, and it has always only been like half a year, that I feel like the sensuality really increases because of my nervous system learning to cope with moments where I don't do anything.
Yeah.
Kind of like that relaxing mode, which I know from laying in bed, but then I'm reading a book. And then I'm doing like, okay, my thankfulness, gratitude thing. And then I'm falling asleep. So to learn with you to just stay in a position because there are yin classes, or to just lay there on a pillow and know that, okay, I will just dedicate this moment and kind of let somebody else decide when I move, really was very hard for me at first, but now kind of a sensuality increases. And I feel that that is kind of like making a little web through my life of sensuality.
Love that. I love that so
Okay.
much.
Thank you for sharing that story. You were cut off for a little bit, but I think we got the main parts. Sorry for that, folks. But one person is in Tokyo, the other is in Duisburg, so we got lots of kilometers between us. Mm. Do you ever feel like you by yourself still get trapped in that habit of optimizing that we have in our society, like optimizing how we look or how much we have to achieve or how much I don't know, how many to-dos we need to do, what we have to be like at a certain age or?
Yeah, I love that question. I think, of course, there are moments when it can sneak up, but to be honest, I feel as though I have let so much of that go, which is really quite, I feel very lucky. It feels really beautiful. But that is, I think, I love that you mentioned the sensuality because I definitely feel that as a really big benefit of these practices. And I also feel this letting go of there's one timeline for everyone as well has been something that I really trust myself, I think. And it's interesting that that can come from moments of doing nothing at all. Because I think over time, and it takes time, I'm a slow learner, so it took me years, but over time, realizing the world doesn't end when I don't do anything, realizing that actually sometimes I find way more clarity and I find way more ease, rather than constantly, feeling like if I don't work on this really, 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 really hard, I'm going to lose it all or everything's going to go away or I'm going to be behind. I think what the rest practice does is, like it imprints into your body that when you stop, nothing bad happens. And I love that you said it was so hard because in the beginning, everyone thinks, oh, it's like gentle yoga. It will be easy. It will be just like relaxing. It's so hard. It's so hard. It really is to just sit with yourself and do nothing. It's one of the hardest things that we can do. But it's so beautiful how I think, to me, it's like a rewiring of the system of just, I always used to feel like I was behind. I always used to feel like there's never enough hours in the day. I always used to feel, oh, I should have this or I should have that. And I'm not in the same place many people my age are, but I just really trust my path and my timing. I feel like, yeah, we've got this. This is how it is. And it's the way it's supposed to be. So yeah, there's so much that in the beginning of practicing rest, I feel like it's hard to even see what the difference is because it just feels hard. And then as the months go on, you start to notice how you're kind of changing in a way.
Yes, that is so true because what I realized in the first, what the rest practice made me realize was when I at first was laying there or sitting on a pillow or whatever we do, all those beautiful things you make us do and do with us, to be more precise. It makes me realize how my mind works, and that is also something which feels frustrating at first, felt for me, to be honest, because I could see like how fast my hands want to grab my phone to distract me, to make time go move faster through a different thing. So I could really feel my need for that cheap dopamine stuff, watching reels and like distraction, only distraction, which isn't a bad thing. I don't want to blame it, but to see how fast I want to do that, or to see how fast my mind tries to convince me that there's something real urgent I need to write down or do right now. like as if my mind would be a neighbor knocking on my door, kind of like, okay, you need to come now. And that is still the hardest. That's still the hardest. So, but it makes me also, over that realization, now I can sit differently. I've been working on practicing a couple of years now, but it makes me be more present when I'm with people, because I can now move my own. Now there goes my mind again. Okay, let's try to be here now. Which is a great gift, to be a better listener for
Yes.
family and stuff. Yeah. So thank you. Okay. When are there still moments where you kind of move out, are forced out of your gentleness? Like, I don't know, is there rage in your life, or fear, or things that, I don't know, sometimes I'm yelling and then I'm, oh God, I should be further. I should be above this, but I'm not. Pretty human stuff going on. So would love to hear your view on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I speak often, like I have a lot of fear, and I don't know whether my fear will ever leave me. I don't know. I know that I've gotten so much better at working with it, processing it, feeling it, like knowing how to switch it. No, like, but fear is something that's really present for me. And, I've only recently made this move to Japan in the last 4 months, have been, yeah, like really, I'm setting up a company here. It's all in another language. Culturally, it's extremely different to the country I'm from. So it's been really challenging. And it's been also the best 4 months that I can ever remember in my life. But it's pushed me definitely into spaces of panic, anxiety. And it's been so interesting to just, because that's kind of what I was thinking before, of like, we have this idea that when we practice, we'll be, and I think we are more like grounded or steady and embodied and things like that, but still life is life. Like when you're in a government building for 12 hours and you can't speak to you, it's just like you're going to experience sensations or whatever's happening in your life. So absolutely, like I've never been so grateful for 10 years of this rest practice in the last 4 months that I've been here, because there's been so much fear and moments of anxiety and all of that. But it's just being able to acknowledge it as fear and anxiety and not necessarily as truth that has been, in the moment, sometimes it's awful. It's uncomfortable. And I'm like, why am I feeling like this? I should be regulated all the time, but we can't be regulated all the time. That's inhuman. But the ability to kind of move it through the body and feel it and know that that it's not necessarily reality, that's such a gift, to be able to see it as almost this thing that's moving through you, or a separate entity rather than the truth. But yeah, I have all the sensations.
That kind of is a relief for me. I'm sorry for you to have to experience that, but we all stay human. I knew that, but it's good to hear it again. So, talking about your business, you are founder of your Daily Rest Studio, a beautiful place for lots of people, teaching them how to rest, teaching them all those beautiful practices. We have soft business circles. We have all kinds of stuff. So it's not only the rest practice. I love it. Kind of still, I haven't seen it all, and I haven't discovered it all. It's still like a flower that is opening. Do you think that you learning more to rest and learning to be gentle with yourself has been a good thing for your business? Like kind of in terms of law of attraction or so, I would say yes, but I'm not sure. It's hard for me as a self-employed to be resting a lot.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? When you're self-employed, it's like every moment of your life becomes something that could be monetized in a way, which is quite scary, which is quite it's not the most human or normal way to live, I think. And And I feel like having a business or being self-employed is a spiritual practice in so many ways. You know, really, I don't know how people who have no practice can have a business. I have no idea how they sleep at night. But I think for me, you know, the way, that's why I do these circles and this mentoring called soft business mentoring and soft business workshops and circles. It was not part of my plan, but people continue to ask and approach me and say, can you tell me about your way? Because everything that I'm reading about or learning about in terms of being self-employed and having a business and making it all work doesn't feel right to me. It feels very formulaic and it doesn't feel like it's working. And I feel really, a lot of people would come to me and just be like, I feel like I'm bad and I'm the problem and I'm wrong and it's all my fault. I'm not good enough. So that was really interesting. And I started to, talk and teach about running business from this more really from a rest-informed space. Like my rest practice really inspired this whole philosophy in terms of business. And it's not about not doing anything. It's not about not working hard, but it's about, again, being able to pause even when there's a million things that you have to do. You know, it's about like maybe sometimes you have to let yourself, when it's possible, have a quieter period in your business, you know, make less money if you can. I know that's not always something we can do, but, you know, to allow, like, to kind of be separate to the ego and be like, I know I need to pull back here. And my ego, my head tells me like, if I pull back a little bit here, I'll make less money, then I'm a failure. I'm not going to lose it all. It's all going to fall apart. And just really being able to tune into you and to trust yourself in how you run the business. And again, just taking these moments for stillness, whether it's a micro moment in your day when you're working from home, or whether it's a moment within the business to let things kind of recalibrate. I just find over and over again, there's nothing scarier than taking a pause. There's nothing scarier than, I don't know, not posting on Instagram for a while, or not like, you know, working on the next thing that you want to sell or to offer. But when you know what I need right now is to just do very little, I always find that following those moments, letting things fall away, that's where there's expansion and growth. And often, you know, when we're in the business, we're kind of constantly grasping for it's the same energy. We're constantly grasping for the next thing before we've even acknowledged, wow, look at the beautiful podcast that I've made that has like this many downloads, or like, you know, look how many people, I have a new member in my studio. That we've got to celebrate that. But because of like how quickly things move online, it's become very normalized to have instantaneous growth, or to, I doubled my income every month, this kind of thing. And it's like, that's not really how it works. That's very a small percentage of people on the outskirts. And I really think for me, the more I embrace this, just resisting the urge not to always be rushing and always be doing and always be 20 steps ahead in my business, the more I'm like really delighted and surprised by what kind of comes through and what happens. But it does take, I think, courage. And it's hard to not, because it feels like you're letting go of control in a way when you're not always 20 steps ahead, when you're not always rushing forward. But actually, you're not. You're actually being kind of more in control because you're like trusting the pace of your body rather than the pace of the internet So I feel really passionately about that. And for me, it's been something that's made just a really big difference too.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And thank you for sharing. I believe the same, because when I started to be fully self-employed, I worked like so much, and it took, my husband once said, well, didn't you get fully self-employed to work less? You're working so much more. And I realized that it's only the fear of failing and the wanting to prove myself that made me so speeding things up and like being everywhere all the time. And I think it was you, but I'm not sure. Actually, I messed up the quotes. But somebody I read recently, like a month or two ago, about like when we are in a river of life, the numbers don't count, because if we are fully taken care of, it is the numbers to like say, okay, have I grown since last year, can't be shown in numbers. It might,
Exactly.
but to prove them, it's like it's a flow of life, and maybe something else grows, which is far more important than a number of Instagram followers or whatever. So that really made something with me about how do I see success and what are the parameters of my success for me. But I don't remember who said that beautiful thing. So if it was you, thank you.
I don't think it was me, but I agree with it fully. I deeply agree with that. Like the numbers only show, they don't show the whole picture. You could have less followers or less money and you could have grown so much more. I really love that.
Okay, last two questions before we close this up. So I would love for you to share, for those who are listening and who are also feeling they are kind of running around life as a rabbit, where would you recommend us to start?
Yeah, so I think always to begin, just to take the smallest step possible. Because sometimes we tell ourselves I have to start this 40-day challenge and it has to be, and it's really like, take the smallest step and just keep taking it. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be the same step every time. I do think there is something to, like you said before, in the studio, you do a class, someone else tells you when to get up. Someone else tells you when you're done. There is something to finding a teacher or finding something you can practice with. So because we already make so many decisions in our life and we're already overwhelmed by that, to be able to press play on a video that's like even 10 minutes long and just do that and do that a few times a week and start there. That can make the biggest difference in the world. If you're unable to find a teacher or somewhere you want to practice, even the simple thing of putting your legs up the wall and setting a timer on your phone for 5 minutes, or even just lying on the floor with a pillow under your head and a pillow under your knees, covering your eyes, setting a timer again for 5 minutes, 10 if you can. But if 5 is all you can manage, 5 is all you can manage. And just being with yourself in that moment and knowing that for 99.9% of people, it's going to be really hard and really uncomfortable. But I think that's and for the other 0.1%, you probably just fall asleep because you're so tired. So, it's like.
You cry. I cried so much in the beginning.
I actually did too. You're right. I cried so much in my first long rest practice. Yeah. Yeah, that's where I would start. If you find a teacher, if you can. If you can't, it's harder to be motivated on your own, I think, to really stick with it if it's something that you struggle with. But my biggest recommendation is do less and just try and do it as frequently as possible without being militant about it. Like, try and do it a few times a week. If you skip a few days, part of the practice is being like, okay, I skipped a few days. Let's go. Let's next. So, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. What I realized, I have to say one word about the crying. I realized that sometimes I didn't cry because I was so sad, but because when the tension released, that made it easier to release it, kind of. Yeah. It was like, okay, there you are, there's your mind. And then you said something like, okay, and now move your hands on your legs or something. And I felt the sensation, and it felt like such a release. And then I started crying. I'm like, why am I crying again? It's like, and now I see it as a release that makes it so much easier for me and makes far more sense than getting stuck in, okay, why am I sad? It's not the sadness, it's a release. Okay.
Yeah.
So, if there would be like 1 or 2 books to recommend for the reading nerds like myself.
That is a great question. I'm a reading nerd as well, as you know. In terms of rest, do you know what I want to say? My recommendation is read a fiction book. That's really my recommendation. Like, read a fiction book that you would just love to read, but your mind tells you that it's kind of a waste of time, or you find it difficult to concentrate because, I don't know, the attention span is not what it used to be. That's almost my recommendation for a book. Like, find a fiction book that you love and make time to read it and lose yourself in it. In terms of books to inspire us to rest or to move more slowly, I'm not sure I have a great answer.
So you need to write one.
It's on the cards.
Whenever it feels aligned, no pressure. We would just love it. So the last fiction book you enjoyed, is there one you enjoyed the last?
Yeah, the last fiction book that I enjoyed is a book called Butter, 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 like what you eat. It's a Japanese book by a female author. It's been recently translated into English. It's an incredible book about women, about body image, about food. Yeah, I find more and more recently, I'm such a reader and a book nerd and a studier, and I read nonfiction almost exclusively for years. I still do read it. Yeah, you too, right? Like self-help, everything. And now I'm finding so many lessons in reading beautiful fiction books. Like, I just feel like I learned so much about myself and felt so inspired by this fictional book about three women and their relationship to each other, to their bodies, to food, to love. Yeah. So Butter, I forget the author's name, but that's what it's called.
I will look it up and we'll put the link in the show.
I recommend it. Yeah.
So, Emmie, tell us about how to start in the Daily Rest Studio, because I started with a free trial and I think that is always possible, isn't it?
Yes, there's so we have in the studio, like you said before, you're still exploring it. There's so many different elements of the studio. We also now have like co-working sessions where you can join and come in, because so many of us are self-employed. We can come and do your work, study whatever language you're studying, do your art, whatever. But so we don't have a all access free trial, but we have, I think, 5 or 6 free classes that you can sign up. You get those classes, you can have ongoing access to them. And, you know, that could be enough to start with, to just take those classes whenever you feel drawn. Some of them are very gentle. Some of them have more movement. If you're newer to being in the body, then starting with a class that has more like stretching or movement might be nice, and then moving into the quieter and stiller classes. But yeah, those free classes exist there. There's a solstice meditation up now as well. That's open to everyone. So that might be nice too.
Yes. Okay. I will put the link to your studio also in the show notes. People, when you feel called, go try Emmie's classes. It really changed a lot for me. And Emmie, thank you so much for taking the precious time. I hope Tokyo unfolds as magic as it started. Love to witness you on Instagram. I will also share your Instagram account, where we see now a lot of Tokyo impressions. My husband is in my ears for years that we need to travel to Japan, and I'm now, okay, I'm in it. I'm
ready.
It's like, what happened? I'm like, yeah, well, I'm following this woman and she's now in Tokyo. And he's like, whatever.
It's an amazing place. It really is.
Yeah, happy that you're lucky there, that you enjoy it. So thank you so much. And whatever you want to say as a goodbye, it's up to you. The next words.
Thank you so much for having me, for having this conversation. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge for anyone hearing this, feeling that it's impossible, to be gentle with yourself, to slow down a little bit, to take that time. It is possible. Like, it really is. And you really do deserve it. And so much can change in those tiny, tiny baby steps. You know, so much can change. So you do deserve it. And it is possible. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Hey und pst, es gibt einen neuen Podcast von mir, der ursprünglich auf einer von mir geschaffenen Kursplattform nur zur Verfügung gestellt wurde. Er heißt Zurück zur Natur und ich beschreibe darin, wie ich ätherische Öle und Supplements nutze und was ich den Leuten, die das mit mir entdecken, rate. Wenn du also Lust hast, auf diesem Weg auch mir ein bisschen zuzuhören, dann findest du Zurück zur Natur überall da, wo du auch diesen Podcast findest. Viel Spaß beim Zuhören.